Hello, good morning everyone, and welcome to the implementation workshop for public facilities for the Community Resiliency Program. And this is a webinar outline. First, we're going to go over Community Resiliency Program, the overview, eligible costs, procurement requirements, and the different contract phases for these particular projects, public facilities specifically. Phase 1, we have pre-contract. Phase 2, execution of contract. Phase 3, pre-construction. Phase 4, construction. And finally, Phase 5, reporting and closeout. Next slide. Just a few housekeeping rules. During the webinar, please submit your questions via the question function, which is located in the red box. We will get to those questions during the Q&A session, and this will take place at the end of the webinar. We also want to let you know that presentation and forms will be available on our website, and there is a link below. Next slide. Here is the slide that goes over the Community Resiliency Program, also known as CRP. The program goal for this particular program is to allow LMI areas and rural and small metro communities to address gaps in their ability to prepare, prevent, and respond to COVID-19 or other future pandemics through construction and non-construction projects. With the CRP program, we've been able to have 11 construction projects and 4 non-construction projects, equaling 15 projects at approximately $43 million. On the right, you can see our pie graph of the different types of programs we have currently had since the beginning of this program, the CDBG CARES program, which came from COVID-19 money to allow states to help build their infrastructure for COVID as well as future pandemics. And as you can see, 33% of that goes to this particular project, CRP. Next slide. This slide goes over the eligible costs. On the left, you see eligible pre-contract and project costs. First, let's go over the pre-contract costs. We have preparation of the CRP application, itemized budget preparation, environmental, title report with legal description, program income plan, and preliminary architectural plans. Next, we have project costs, which include acquisition, design costs, construction or rehab of public facilities, and administration. If you could go back one slide. Thank you. And the next are the ineligible costs. And as you can see, you can quickly read through them, but the main ones are office space for the general conduct of government. Equipment must be permanently installed for it to be an eligible cost. Next slide. This slide goes over the procurement requirements that need to be followed throughout this program. First, we have the CDBG procurement requirements. Next, we discuss the procurement for admin and engineering services that have already been completed and that can be funded, but they need to be cleared through TDHCA. Next, we want to emphasize that the procurement documents can be monitored at any time, and failure to meet procurement requirements may result in ineligible costs. At the bottom, we highlighted that all contractors and subcontractors must be verified for eligibility at www.sam.gov for them to be eligible to be paid through this program. Next slide. Here we have procurement for construction. These are the different procurement types that are eligible to be done through this program. You can read more through it, but we have micro purchases, small purchases, sealed bids, non-competitive proposals, and competitive proposals. Next, we go into phase 1. It's okay. Yeah, we can go into the next slide. Next, we have phase 1, which is pre-contract. We are going to go over the itemized budget, environmental review and clearance. The clearance has to be done through TDHCA. title report, and program income plan if applicable. Next slide. The itemized budget has already been submitted to us. So right now we are in the process of reviewing them for eligible costs, and it will be finalized in the contract that you receive and sign. Next slide. The environmental review and clearance is required to comply with the following statutory and regulatory requirements highlighted in the green boxes. In addition, CRP funds cannot be dispersed prior to an environmental review being conducted, and the environmental review must be cleared by TDHCA. We consider choice limiting actions such as acquisition or construction before the environmental review is complete, and these will be they would be ineligible costs. In addition, we are providing administrative and design engineering activities funding exempt for activities. It's a form that's going to be completed on our website that will be provided at a future date. Next slide. And here is the process that we have developed with our environmental review team. And this is basically what you're going to have to be going through for all the projects. And below in the blue box is the name of the person that you will be contacting. Her name is Jacqueline Leisure, and that is her email address. Thank you. Okay, next slide. Title report. The title report is very important, and it is part of phase 1, the pre-contract phase post-award. It must be dated within 60 days prior to the contract execution. It must include information about both the property and the owner, the legal description. We must be notified of any liens or encumbrances against the title, tax information, whether back taxes are owed, information about the existence and location of easements, and a list of exclusions, covenants, restrictions, conditions, historical rules, and oversight. Next slide. This slide goes over the program income plan. A program income plan is only required if CRP project will generate income. Program income, also known as PI, is defined as gross income directly generated from a CDBG funded activity. It's subject to all CDBG cross-cutting requirements. We are preparing guidance that will be coming soon. As well, this is going to include a $35,000 threshold. This basically here, it accounts for the gross program income that is generated annually, and that program year is from September 1st through August 31st. It subtracts incidental program costs, and then the net program income can be calculated from there. If the net program income is under $35,000, then it is not considered program income. And we've included an example here just so that you can see. Here you can see City of ABC generated an annual gross program income of $50,000 by renting it out for private events such as parties, anniversaries, what have you. A portion of those payments, though, went to incidental program costs for maintenance and staff. Therefore, their incidental program costs equal $25,000. So the equation calls for $50,000, which would be the gross program income, minus the $25,000 incidental program costs, leaving them with a $25,000 net program income. This would not be considered program income. If you have any more questions, please feel free to contact us and we will provide more clarification. Next slide, please. Phase 2 is execution of grant contract. Here we will discuss execute contract and delivery to TDHCA, authorized signatory that needs to sign all CRP related documents via DocuSign, the land use restriction agreement, and monthly reports that are due on the 15th of each month. Next slide, please. We want to make sure that this is really emphasized, that you must continue to meet and sustain national objective throughout the duration of this program and an additional 5 years after closeout. The national objectives include LMA, which is areas 51% LMI. If for a certain year you do not meet that 51%, we highly recommend a survey be conducted. LMC's income, food pantry, 51% of LMI must be that type of clientele. And then the last one is presumed benefit, which for this CRP program, it includes seniors and abused and neglected children. If the project fails to continue to meet these national objectives, the subrecipient must pay all the funds that have been expended back to TDHCA. Next slide. Phase 3 is pre-construction. Here we'll go over architectural plans for accessibility review, plans and specs completed, acquisition and report, Section 3 plan, civil rights and equal opportunity requirements, and labor standards requirements. Next slide. Design and plans. Plans and specs must be completed by a professional architect or engineer. And it also has to include an accessibility review that must be reviewed and approved by TDHCA. This is a requirement for newly constructed or altered facilities that need to be designed and constructed in a manner that makes a facility readily accessible and usable by persons with disabilities. Next slide, please. Acquisition. Every subrecipient must submit an acquisition report, whether or not you will be acquiring land. If you don't need to acquire land, it is a very simple yes or no for you, but if you are, there will be additional information that will be needed. But that will be coming soon as well. Here we have the Section 3 plan and what it needs to include. Apply to each recipient of $200,000 of covered HUD funding is required to comply with Section 3. All projects and activities involving housing construction, rehabilitation, or other public construction that is funded with covered HUD funding. Section 3 is triggered when the normal completion of construction and rehab projects creates a need for new employment, contracting, or training opportunities. There will be a Section 3 reporting, and we, at a future date, will be providing a sample plan. Next slide, please. We also want to make sure during phase 3, especially pre-construction phase, to go over the civil rights and equal opportunity requirements. All subrecipients must comply to these requirements and provide documentation to their file. These requirements include Section 504, equal opportunity, fair housing, citizen participation, and excessive force. Next slide, please. Here we've included a checklist for pre-construction. Every subrecipient needs to complete this. So you first have to designate a labor standards advisor, obtain wage decision for the project through sam.gov, complete a 10-day call, which means 10 days prior to bid opening, you need to make sure that the wages are still accurate. Verify eligibility of contractor and subcontractors, again through sam.gov, and administer and enforce Davis-Bacon requirements. Next slide. This is part of the same checklist. We just called it 1B, so it's not too congested on one slide. But here we have the last 3 requirements in the checklist. Conduct pre-construction conference, and when you do so, please include your assigned TDHCA staff or team. Then we will issue a notice to proceed, and subcontractors' responsibilities must continue to be identified throughout the project. Next slide. Here we have phase 4, and we will be going over the labor standards and checklists for this particular phase and project signage. The labor standards, again, include the Davis-Bacon Act. Construction for over 2,000 must pay prevailing wage rates. Copeland Anti-Kickback Act requires that workers are paid weekly, and contractors must maintain and submit these weekly payrolls. Contractors over 100,000 require workers to get overtime compensation, which equals to time and a half for hours in excess of 40 hours. Below is the reference where you can find that at. And the last one is Section 3 requires the provision of employment opportunities for low-income residents of the project area. Next slide. Here's the checklist for the phase 4 construction. Ensure all required signs are posted at construction sites. Classify all workers according to the wage decision. Request additional classifications if needed, and review the weekly payroll, and make sure you follow the 4 bullet points for that particular bullet point of weekly payroll. Next slide. This is a continuance of that checklist. Conduct employee interviews and check against pay rules. If violations or discrepancies are found, take corrective action and notify TDHCA. Prepare and submit to TDHCA a copy of semi-annual labor standards enforcement report and determine if any restitution is outstanding. Next slide. This is, again, another continuation. The labor standards officer needs to ensure that all work is completed, verify that all payrolls are accounted, ensure that all payments have been made, and determine if any labor standard complaints are outstanding. Next slide. Here is the required project signage. I won't bore you by reading everything, but I'll just give you the names of the project signage that is needed. First, we have the Davis-Bacon poster. Next, we have the Davis-Bacon prevailing wage rates. Then we have HUD Form 4010 Federal Labor Standards Division, Executive Order 11246, Section 3 Notice, Affirmative Action Plan, and Workers' Compensation Information. Next slide. This slide shows you the required CRP project sign that must be posted at the project site itself. Here in the red area, we have project name and project address. The white area shows the name of the city or county that the project is taking place in. In the middle is the required text that must be displayed on the sign. You can use that text or a similar one. The sign must be 4 by 8. That's 4 feet by 8 feet. And please make sure to send us a picture of that signage just to make sure that we know what you're posting and that everything meets the required specifications. Next slide. Phase 5, the last phase, closeout. Okay, here we're going to be talking about the project completion report, which is going to be due 45 days of the contract end date. That's going to include expenditures, any type of retainage, accomplishments, beneficiaries, Section 3 reporting, and then we'll be discussing final public hearing and final inspection. Next slide. This slide goes over the citizen participation requirements. Annually, a public meeting must be conducted to seek public comment on the needs or uses of the CDBG CV funds. In addition, a final public hearing has to take place. You also must follow complaint procedures that have been established locally by the state, specifically TDHCA, and by HUD at the federal level. Next slide. This slide goes over inspections and monitoring. Inspections can include site inspections that can take place at any time of the project, before, during, and after construction. We also have compliance inspections and the final inspection, which will take into account the accessibility review and how it was implemented in the project itself. Monitoring, a checklist will be coming soon so that you know what we will be monitoring for. This can include a desk review and an on-site monitoring review by TDHCA. And here we have a TDA monitoring checklist that you can look at, that we will be referring to in our own checklist. Next slide. Here we have a list of the CRP documentation that we have been discussing throughout this entire PowerPoint presentation, and that will be forthcoming in the upcoming months. Next slide. Here are the CRP project teams, as earlier discussed in the first slide. We have Erica Garza, who's a manager. Katie Wilkinson and Lauren Robbie are both program coordinators that are under her team. The next team we have is Raul Salazar, who is also a manager, and Allison Schur, who is a program administrator, and Kendall Cowden, who is a program coordinator, and they're under his team. Again, we look forward to serving you, and we are very excited about these projects. And yeah, next slide. Now we have the Q&A session. So let's get your questions up, and then we can start answering them. Just give us 1 sec.
Thank you, Lauren. Sorry about that. I think, Katie, do we have some questions? And I think we do have some questions, and Rudy and I will attempt to answer your questions.
Okay, sorry about that. So there's a question in the chat. Can you use best value sealed proposals method?
We require sealed bids and they need to be to the most responsible bidder. So as long as your bid identifies what you consider responsible, so qualifications and references should be adhered to and documented in the bid documents, or in the file.
Okay, and this next question, what is the definition of failing to continue to meet the national objective?
I can take that one, Erica. So for these funds, the project
sorry, Rudy, you're cutting up a little bit.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Clear?
Rudy, there's some static in your audio.
Okay, I can hear it. Can you take that one,
Yeah.
Erica?
Let me try. For CDBG-CV funds, the project must meet an eligible activity national objective and the COVID tieback. To be awarded, your project must meet a national objective. It was either low to moderate area or low to moderate clientele, presumed benefit. So if LMA, low mod area, throughout the 5-year period after closeout of this project, the LMA must continue to be 51% of the service area, whether city or county, whatever service area it was.
And this question is about project signage. Will permanent signs be required on the public facilities once the project is complete?
No permanent signs are required, just the temporary sign.
Is there an administrative startup checklist that will be provided once the contract is executed?
Yeah, we're working on those checklists as we speak. You know, for those of y'all that are familiar with the TDHCA program, some of those checklists are good. But we will be providing checklists as things go up. As we create these checklists, we'll be adding them to the website under the forms section.
And this next question, will TDHCA be providing templates for all required forms?
At this, yes, we are trying to provide the templates. If you move faster than we do, we will accept the TDHCA templates as well.
This next question, will the slideshow be available? Yes, we will be posting the slideshow on our website for your reference. We'll be getting that up pretty soon. Is the program income plan required in perpetuity or just for the 5 years after closeout?
We're working on the program income plan right now. It also we're hoping that it'll just be for the 5 years, but we're working on it. No guarantees it won't be for perpetuity, whatever, you know what I mean.
Will the environmental review be submitted through our contract system? And if so, how do we obtain that access?
No, it won't be submitted through, I'm not sure which contract system you're referring to. Are you referring to the, let me see.
I think they're probably referring to the housing contract system. And no, you won't need to submit it that way. On our slide, we mentioned that you'll be emailing it to TDHCA staff.
Yeah, again, we're on the environmental, we're asking for you to submit the environmental specialist at TDHCA, Jacqueline, wants to look at it before you publish. So email her a copy before you publish.
Yeah. This next question, closeout, is the 45-day period the end date of the construction contract or the end date of the grant agreement?
The grant agreement.
Does this have a TDA Go type implementation software?
No.
We do.
Go ahead, Katie.
I was just saying, we don't have an implementation software. We're going to provide what you need to implement on our website. And then later we'll be doing a drawdown webinar to explain how you'll do those drawdowns in our contract system.
Yes, we will be having another workshop just on submitting your draw request via the housing contract system. So look for that in the next 3 to 4 weeks.
And similarly, this question is about monthly reports. And yes, we will get into that in the next training. And we'll be providing a template for monthly reports. Will there be an environmental workshop or training?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Will there be an environmental workshop or training just specifically for environmental reviews?
No, but we're available if you need technical assistance, and we can get you in contact with Jacqueline directly if you need help doing the environmental.
Perfect. And this question, when is the next training? We don't have a date yet, but we'll be sending that out to you as soon as we have that. Do architectural plans need to be complete and submitted over before the contract award, or at what phase do they need to be reviewed by TDHCA?
That would be prior to construction. So a lot of the renderings, the drawings that y'all have submitted, we've already forwarded those to ADA within TDHCA for review. I think there's a couple that we are in the process of reaching out to. So the ADA compliance review should happen before construction. So, and a lot of y'all are in that process right now of it being reviewed internally here.
And there is a question about the semi-annual labor standards report. Erica, do you want to talk about what the purpose of that report is?
Let's see.
Am I still staticky, Katie?
Oh, you're better now.
Oh, okay, sorry. So the semi-annual labor standards report is a report that's required to HUD for construction projects. So that's done twice a year. So we would be gathering the information from each individual project probably a month before we have to submit, and then we compile the data and information, and then we submit it to HUD for review. But we will be needing information from each of the projects so that we can compile. And we will be going over those. Each of these projects will have a reconstruction conference, so we will be going over a lot of that detailed information. This was just an overall snapshot. So one of the next meetings or the next webinars is going to be a reporting, monthly reports, submitting draws, et cetera, and then thereafter we'll be having individual pre-construction conferences where we can go into more deeper information, and then even after that we'll be having a lot of one-on-one type of meetings just to go over everything that we can assist with and whatnot on the project.
Okay, great. How long will we be obligated to conduct annual public hearings from the citizen participation requirements?
Alrighty, so that is a TDHCA, that's a TDHCA requirement. So for the NOFA, we indicated that there needed to be 2 public hearings. The first one prior to submitting the application, and then there can be another one after the application. And some jurisdictions do take things back to their governing body, either council or commissioner's court, to accept and appropriate the funding. So that can count as a public hearing as well. Because it's COVID and CARES funding, we do require that there be a 5-day comment period. So if you do that, for example, then that would comply with that. And then if this goes on into, you know, for example, the following year, though that the requirement's still there, it can just be some kind of update to the governing body to qualify as a public hearing.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rudy. At this time, I think that is all of our questions. But we'll be going back through it to make sure that we have answered everything. And if we see any pending questions, we will reach out to you directly to answer those. And always feel free to reach out to your assigned team if you have any questions that weren't covered in this webinar, or if anything comes up.
Yeah, and just to conclude, you know, again, there will be more, a couple of more meetings. One, you know, another general type meeting with going over the, just going over the reporting and, you know, how to do the draws, the monthly reporting. We'll go into very, very specifics there. And then again, you know, we will have individual pre-construction meetings when the time comes. And then you're, at this point by now, you would know when or who your assigned project team is on our side. So we would be very open to answer, you know, any question, all questions, you know, for that. The next question that did come up was about when we will be issuing the contracts. The contracts have to be have to clear an environmental review. So once we get verification of the environmental review, we have finalized the budgets with you guys. And in most cases we have, but it's just the lingering environmental review. Once that's cleared, then we can go into entering into a contract, execute a contract. But we have included in the contracts what would be considered pre-contracting costs, you know, such as pre-award and then post-award, but prior to the contract. So just know that all the work that's being done right now, if it was procured correctly, of course, it would all be reimbursable. And we would be going over, in the next type of meeting for the draws, we'll be going over what the turnaround time would be for us reimbursing these projects. So yeah, so if there's any other questions, again, that doesn't mean that the questions would end. Just continue sending us questions and we will be more than happy to respond to those questions, you know, individually, because they're all going to be very individualized questions. Some may be, you know, for everyone, but just send us those questions and we'll respond to you as quick as possible. So thank you for attending this. We apologize initially for the rocky start. We had this planned for weeks, and of course something would go a little awry at the last minute. But thank you very much, and we really appreciate y'all's attendance on this.
Okay, thank you. I think at this point we'll end the webinar and we will be posting the slides on our website. Thank you.